There are two types of destruction in this world. The first one, loud, messy, and primitive. It's what most people expect. Yelling, insults, chaos, a public showdown. That's the kind of destruction you see coming. It's reactive, emotional, predictable. But the second kind, that's the one that really leaves a mark. It's quiet, elegant, strategic. It's the one people never see coming because it doesn't make noise. It makes moves. This is the kind of destruction that doesn't come from rage. It comes from control, from stillness, from being 10 steps ahead while they're still trying to pick a fight. That's the kind Machiavelli understood better than anyone. Because real power, it doesn't scream, it smiles, it nods, it agrees with you, and then quietly removes your influence from the room like you were never there. If you ever want to truly dismantle someone, don't argue, don't lash out, don't even threaten them. Just stop reacting, stay calm, stay kind, and watch what happens when their world starts unraveling without your emotional energy feeding it. See, Machiavelli wasn't emotional about revenge. He was surgical. He knew the most effective way to get back at someone isn't by hurting them. It's by showing them they don't matter anymore, that they have zero control over your emotions. And for people who thrive on attention, control, or drama, that's worse than violence. This form of destruction starts with a mindset shift. You stop responding to their chaos. You stop explaining yourself. You stop feeding the loop they depend on. Because let's be honest, some people aren't just toxic. They're addicted. Addicted to your anger, addicted to your forgiveness, addicted to your attention. And the moment you take that away, you break the pattern they were counting on. That's when the real game begins. You don't fight, you don't run, you simply detach. Quietly, politely, strategically. You keep your eyes calm, your tone pleasant, your energy balanced, and suddenly they're the ones spiraling. Why? Because your silence forces them to ask the one question they can't answer. Do you even care anymore? And when your smile no longer feels warm, just measured, distant, maybe even rehearsed, they feel it. Not in your words, but in your energy. They know deep down that something's shifted, and that's terrifying to someone who once felt central to your emotional life. Now they're not even sure they're part of your story. Machiavelli believed every interaction is a power negotiation. And true power, it doesn't need to prove itself. It just is. It walks in, says less, and leaves people guessing. That's why polite destruction works so well, because it doesn't get messy. It doesn't leave fingerprints. It's clean, it's classy, and it's absolutely devastating. You don't destroy someone by proving them wrong. You destroy them by showing they're no longer even relevant. Now picture this, someone insults you publicly. They expect you to get defensive, to bite back, to react. But instead you smile, you nod, you say, you might be right. And then you turn to someone else, someone they secretly feel threatened by, someone who now has your attention. In that single move, you do three things. You deny them the power they were trying to steal, you redirect attention to someone else, and you maintain perfect composure. That's not just self-control, that's psychological warfare. And you've already won. Here's the genius behind it. Machiavellian strategy flips expectations. They expect you to confront them, you cooperate. They want resistance, you give silence. They anticipate revenge, you offer polite detachment. And while they're burning energy trying to read you, trying to trigger you, you're already executing the next phase, removing their influence, reshaping alliances, and slowly turning them into a background character in a story they thought they were starring in. That's not drama, that's design. Let's take it further. Agree with them in public, then quietly undermine them behind the scenes. In the meeting, support their idea. Nod, smile, make them feel secure. Then later start influencing others, not with gossip, with questions, subtle surgical questions. Ask things like, do you think that plan aligns with our bigger goals? Or, I wonder if there's a more efficient way to approach this. You're not attacking, you're planting seeds, strategic doubt. By the time they realize they're losing trust, it's too late. The room has shifted, and they don't even know when it happened. This isn't pettiness. This is precision. And here's the thing, destruction shouldn't be personal. Not if you want to win. It's not about being hurt. It's about recognizing when someone is a threat to your peace, your progress, or your position. And when that moment comes, you don't make announcements, you just move. With calm, with clarity, with the kind of politeness that feels unnerving. Because you're not punishing them. You're just not playing anymore. And nothing terrifies a manipulator more than indifference. Because indifference means they have no power over you, no access, no effect. You've pulled the emotional plug and they're left flailing. Let's go deeper. Start using what I call social freezing. Don't cut them off completely. That's too obvious, too reactive. Instead, just stop warming the room they stand in. You still greet them, but only with formal courtesy. You still engage, but only when necessary. You still smile, but it doesn't touch your eyes and they'll feel that shift in temperature. It's subtle, but it stings. Like walking into a place that used to feel like home and now feels like a museum. You didn't fight them. You just removed the oxygen. Another powerful move? Mirror their behavior, but upgrade it. If they've been cold to your ideas, suddenly you become their biggest cheerleader in all the wrong moments. When the pressure's on, give them the floor. Let's hear more from them. They've got strong ideas, all with a genuine tone. But underneath, it's chess. You're putting them in the spotlight at the exact moment it burns. Now add in empty praise. Praise them often, but with vague compliments. Say things like, your leadership style is very unique, or you definitely handled that situation. Interestingly, it sounds supportive, but it's laced with ambiguity. It's not praise, it's perception management. Meanwhile, you keep your own work sharp, quietly excellent, flawless. So now the contrast between your vague compliments and your real performance starts to grow. And they'll feel it deeply, because they'll realize you don't need their validation anymore. You're not competing. You've already ascended. You've made them irrelevant, gently, silently. This is Machiavellian warfare. Not about ego, not about outbursts. It's about outcome. You don't need to defeat them. You create a world where they were never a factor. Here's the secret weapon in all of this. Politeness. Not emotional politeness, but cold, measured, professional kindness. The kind that makes people unsure if you're still an ally or already an enemy. You never give them the answer. You just keep showing up. Pleasant, unreadable, untouchable, and that makes people spiral. Because when someone's unsure where they stand with you, when your politeness is laced with distance, they start doubting everything. Themselves, you, the situation. And doubt is more destructive than any insult. Let's go deeper into the most underrated form of dominance, emotional removal. Machiavelli would say the person who keeps their emotions private holds the room. Most people, they leak, they overshare, they defend, they get loud. But you do the opposite. You speak less. You move slower. You always look like you're about to say something devastating, but never do. And that silence, that stillness, it breaks people. Not because they fear what you'll say, but because they can't predict what you're thinking. And unpredictability is power. It keeps people walking on emotional eggshells while you remain composed. Here's what polite destruction really looks like in a live setting. Let's say someone tries to make a snide comment or passive-aggressive jab in front of others. Most would fire back, but not you. You pause, smile, then say, "That's a fascinating opinion. I love how confident you are." And you leave it there. You didn't insult them. You didn't get rattled. You disarmed them with elegance. And better yet, you hand them the mic. Tell me more. I'd love to understand your thinking. Now they're speaking, rambling, overexposing. They start sounding insecure while you sit back, calm, poised, detached. Everyone in the room feels the shift, even if they can't quite explain it. That's not confrontation, that's orchestration. You didn't attack. You created space for them to fall into their own performance. That's power, but let's take it one level deeper. There's a final tactic, the one that seals the whole operation. Exit without closure. This is the kill shot. After all the polite distance, strategic detachment, and flawless composure, you leave. Not with a dramatic scene, not with a confrontation. You just stop showing up, emotionally, mentally, socially. You disappear from their orbit with a quiet, clean break. No grand ending, just absence. And here's the brutal part. They won't even realize you're gone until it's too late. Because what they thought was tension was actually dependence. What they mistook for conflict was actually connection. And now that it's over, they're left with a question they can't answer. Was any of it ever real? That's polite destruction. You didn't argue. You didn't prove them wrong. You didn't even need closure. You removed yourself like they were never part of the plan to begin with. Machiavelli never wanted power that had to announce itself. He wanted power that could be felt, even in silence, especially in silence. Let's now talk about something people rarely understand: turning your enemy's strengths into weaknesses without challenging them directly. This is the highest form of polite destruction. You don't just avoid conflict, you flip the narrative. You use their ego as the weapon. Let's break it down. Instead of attacking their arrogance, you applaud it in the wrong context. Tell the aggressive person they're wonderfully assertive in a room discussing emotional intelligence. Tell the impulsive one you admire their bold decision-making right after a failed project. Compliment the person who overshares by calling them so honest. It's rare to see someone talk so freely. Now here's what you've done. You praise them. You did it in public. You made it sound like support. But in truth, you held up a mirror. And now they're sweating because people are watching them in a new light. You're not being mean. You're being strategic. You've weaponized sincerity. And that breaks people faster than insults ever could. Why? Because now they're suspicious. They don't know if your compliments are real or calculated. They start second-guessing your every smile, every word. And once that paranoia kicks in, it doesn't go away. You've infected the foundation they used to stand on, their self-image. Let's take it further. Use Socratic sabotage. Ask questions in public you already know the answers to. Like, hey, what inspired you to take that approach? Could you walk us through the logic behind that decision again? I noticed the result didn't match the initial goal. Was that part of the plan? You're not criticizing, you're inquiring, and that's what makes it so devastating. Because while they try to explain themselves, the audience hears the truth. Not through your words, but through theirs. You let them self-destruct with their own voice. And here's the key: your face, calm, respectful, curious. You look like you're learning, not leading a takedown. That's the difference between drama and strategy. Drama reacts, strategy designs. Now we reach the final phase. You don't stay to celebrate. This is where most people fail. They want to see the collapse. They want to watch the downfall. But if you're truly powerful, you don't need that. You execute. You walk away, mid-conversation if you must. You smile. You thank them. You leave. Because the moment you need to witness the impact, you've given them power again. The truly dangerous player is the one who doesn't even look back. Now let's say they realize they're losing you. They start to panic. They come back with apologies, or compliments, or tears. What do? You accept it, you smile, you forgive, you say all the right things. But you never return to who you were with them. You respond, but slower. You engage, but never initiate. You've become a stranger in a polite disguise. That's the cruelest kindness, because it confirms their worst fear. They were forgiven, but they'll never regain access. That's not punishment. That's a lesson. Machiavelli wouldn't yell at a traitor. He'd promote them sideways. He'd clap in public and exile in private, because exile doesn't always need a border. Sometimes the coldest exile is emotional. And here's where your legacy starts to form. People begin to notice you didn't explode. You didn't gossip. You didn't retaliate. You just removed. That scares people more than any outburst ever could, because now they know if you can destroy someone that elegantly, without chaos, without confrontation, without raising your voice, what else are you capable of? Your silence becomes your threat. Your absence becomes your reputation. Let's be brutally honest. Most people destroy themselves trying to destroy others. They get loud, emotional, reckless. They throw everything they have at the person who wronged them and end up looking weaker for it. But you rise, not from pride, but from precision. Because this was never about revenge. This was about standards, about what you tolerate, about what you allow into your space, about proving, not to them, but to yourself that you no longer need to fight for your place in any room. You own your peace now. You've already won. And they know it the second they realize you're no longer emotionally accessible. That's the edge. That's the level Machiavelli admired, where your name carries weight not because of what you say, but because of what you no longer need to say. Your smile was the rope, your poise was the blade, and your absence, that was the grave. There's a strange silence that follows polite destruction. Not the kind of silence that comes after a fight, shouting, slamming doors, or broken friendships. No, this silence is colder, cleaner. It feels like walking into a room where your presence used to echo, and now nothing. No reaction, no warmth, just absence. They feel it before they understand it, that quiet shift, and they begin to ask themselves, why aren't you angry? Why aren't you fighting back? Why does this feel worse than rage? That's the genius of it. You've removed the one thing they depended on, your emotional response. Now they're stuck, not with your wrath, but with your indifference. Not with your words, but with your stillness. And it drives them insane. Because suddenly they can't predict you, they can't reach you, and they can't fix what they don't even know is broken. When you stop reacting, you become unreadable. And the unreadable person always holds the advantage. Machiavelli understood something most people don't. Power should never be loud. It should never need to explain itself. It should be felt, quietly, deeply, like gravity. Unseen, but undeniable. So what do you do when someone disrespects you, betrays you, tries to tear you down? You don't lash out. You don't plead for understanding. You don't make a scene. You freeze them out. Not through isolation, but through social freezing. You stop warming the air around them. You still greet them, politely. You still speak to them, formally. You still smile, but it never touches your eyes. And that shift, it changes everything. Because people remember how you made them feel. And now they're walking into a space that once felt warm and feels like nothing. Not cold, just hollow. And that emptiness, that's what destroys them. You didn't yell, you didn't accuse, you didn't explain. You just stopped making them feel central. Let's look at another tactic Machiavelli would admire. Mirrored deference. Give them exactly what they gave you, just packaged in elegance. If they ignored your ideas before, now you support theirs almost enthusiastically in moments where the pressure's high. If they left you exposed in public, now you do the same, politely, always with a smile, always with grace. But make no mistake, it's deliberate. It's not revenge, it's reflection. They're experiencing their own behavior through your poise. And deep down, they'll know it. They'll sense something's off, but they won't be able to point to anything specific because technically you're being gracious. But emotionally, you've already left. Next, layer in empty praise, but do it with precision. Compliment them, but keep it vague. That was a very interesting approach. I admire how confident you are, even when people don't agree. You always bring such bold energy to the room. These statements sound positive, but they plant doubt. They make others listen closely. They feel supportive, but hollow. And while that's happening, you stay flawless. In your work, in your timing, in your delivery. You don't need applause. Your results speak louder than any argument. And now the contrast becomes clear. Your calm competence versus their fragile confidence. And that difference, it grows and grows until the room notices, until they notice, until you become untouchable and they become forgettable. That's not an accident. That's a blueprint. And it leads to the final weapon in this psychological warfare. You erase them, not with malice, but with absence. You stop mentioning them. You stop reacting to them. You stop including their name in spaces where it once held weight. And when someone brings them up, you respond with the single most devastating phrase in the world. "Oh, I haven't thought about them in ages." That line, that's the death sentence, because it confirms what they feared most. They didn't just lose your attention, they lost your memory. They're not a villain, they're not even a character in your story anymore. And that's the final stage of polite destruction. You don't give them legacy, you don't give them revenge, you give them erasure, because rage makes them feel important. But silence buries them. And here's the part that most people overlook. This isn't just about them, it's about everyone watching. When others see that you can destroy someone, completely, methodically, politely, they begin to respect your restraint more than most people's strength. Because now you've proven something far more powerful than dominance. You've proven you don't need permission. You don't need an audience. You don't need to win. You've already won. You won the moment you stop needing them to understand your silence. Now let's be brutally clear. Most people destroy themselves trying to destroy others. They throw tantrums, they gossip, they overshare, they spiral, but not you. Because you're not building revenge. You're building reputation. You're not seeking closure. You're seeking freedom, and freedom doesn't scream. It walks away. So what happens to them now? They'll try to pull you back. Sometimes with anger. Sometimes with sweetness. Sometimes with apologies. And when that happens, you accept it. But you never return. You don't initiate. You don't lean in. You don't open the door they once walked through like they owned the place. You've closed that door, not with a bang, but with grace, and it'll stay closed. That's not punishment. That's evolution. And that, Machiavelli would say, is what makes you truly untouchable. Now let's zoom out. Polite destruction isn't just an act, it's a legacy. It's not about making a moment hurt. It's about reshaping how you're remembered. When people talk about you, they won't say you were vengeful. They'll say you were sharp, focused, strategic. They'll say they never needed to react. They just moved on. They didn't fight. They vanished. They didn't speak, but somehow everyone listened. And your enemy, they won't be feared. They'll be forgotten because you never gave them the reward of your breakdown. They'll be left performing damage control, trying to make sense of what happened, paranoid, insecure, spinning in circles, all because you removed the one thing they were using to stay afloat, your emotional energy. That's the final step. That's the eraser. When your name becomes lighter than air in their mouth and heavier than guilt in their mind. Machiavelli understood this truth. The most effective form of destruction is one that never needs explanation. It never needs permission. It never even needs to look like destruction. Because the real art, it's in the silence you leave behind. So if you're ever in a position where someone pushes too far, remember this. Don't rage, don't rant, don't reveal, just smile, pause, exit. Let them think they've won. Let them wait for the storm. And when the storm never comes, when you remain still, graceful, untouchable, that's when it hits them. The destruction already happened, and they never even saw the blade. This is Machiavellian destruction, polished, patient, permanent.